They were feared across the continent, the Zulu, warriors whose name echoed through valleys, a nation carved by Shaka's spear and the thunder of the Mafeking. But if you follow their bloodline, past the battles, past the legends, a whisper emerges. A whisper that tells a story not of conquest, but of ancient kinship, and a secret hidden for over 100,000 years. Modern genetic research pulled this secret from the heart of Zulu blood. Inside the mitochondria, the tiny engines that carry a mother's legacy to her children, scientists uncovered haplogroups L0D and L0K. These aren't just codes, they are the signatures of the Khoisan, the first people of southern Africa, hunter-gatherers who walked these lands when the rest of humanity was still finding its way. L0D and L0K are among the oldest maternal lineages on Earth, stretching back over 100,000 years, to mothers who lived long before kingdoms, before borders, before history itself. Picture it. A desert under an ancient sun, a Khoisan mother carrying her child along the ridges of what is now KwaZulu-Natal. Her footsteps sink softly into the sand, leaving a trail that time will erase. But her blood, her DNA, survives. Today, in the heart of every Zulu mother, that memory beats on, an unbroken chain from the first women of this land to the modern descendants of Shaka's people. And here lies the great contradiction. The Zulu, remembered as fierce conquerors, carry within them the gentle legacy of the land's earliest daughters. A people who once hunted with bows and whispered around fires, now live on in the veins of those who once ruled with spears. The conqueror and the conquered, forever fused in blood. This discovery doesn't just rewrite the Zulu story, it bends time itself. Because if the mothers of the Zulu trace their lineage to the first people of southern Africa, who were the men? The fathers who came from the distant north, across rivers and forests, carrying a new language, a new way of life. And how did their journey change the destiny of an entire continent? That secret waits in the next chapter of their DNA. Their story begins over 5,000 years ago, in the rain-soaked forests and river valleys of modern-day Cameroon and Nigeria. Here, the ancestors of the Zulu, the Bantu-speaking peoples, began a journey that would become the largest migration in African history. Around 3000 to 4000 BCE, families left their homelands, carrying iron tools, new farming techniques, and their cattle, following rivers and savannas in search of fertile land. Step by step, generation by generation, they moved east and south, carving paths through dense equatorial forests, along the Great Lakes of Africa, and finally toward the wide open grasslands that would one day become KwaZulu-Natal. Their DNA still carries the memory of this migration. In the Y chromosome of modern Zulu men, over 55 to 60% carry haplogroup E 1b1a, EM2, the genetic signature of that Bantu expansion. Every father who passed this marker forward is a silent witness to a 5,000-year journey, one that reshaped Africa forever. By the time their descendants reached southern Africa, somewhere between 300 and 500 CE, they were not the first to walk this land. The Khoisan, the first people of southern Africa, had lived here for tens of thousands of years. Hunters and herders, following the rhythms of nature. When the Bantu arrived, it wasn't just migration, it was a collision of worlds. New languages met the whispers of the old, iron met stone, and the first threads of a new people, the ancestors of the Zulu, began to weave themselves into the soil of this ancient land. Visualize the moment. A Bantu family looks down from a hill in what is now KwaZulu-Natal. The rivers below shimmer in the sun. Smoke rises from a distant Khoisan camp. Every choice they make, every step they take, will echo for centuries in their blood. And as these two worlds touched for the first time, something extraordinary happened. A secret fusion began, one that would live on in every heartbeat. But this fusion was not a meeting of equals. Hidden in the blood of the Zulu is a story of survival, choice, and quiet erasure, a secret no history book ever told, and only DNA could uncover it. When scientists unlocked the modern Zulu genome, they found something extraordinary and unsettling. On the paternal side, the Y chromosome passed from father to son. The story is clear. Almost every lineage carries haplogroup E 1b1a E-M2, the signature of the Bantu migration that began over 5,000 years ago in Cameroon and Nigeria. It is the mark of the fathers who journeyed south across rivers, forests, and savannas. But the maternal side, the mitochondrial DNA passed from mother to child, tells a very different tale. Up to 20 to 23% of the Zulu genome traces back to Khoisan women, the first daughters of southern Africa. The oldest maternal lineages, L0D and L0K, are like living fossils, whispering across 100,000 years of human history. These lineages link modern Zulu mothers directly to women who walked the land when no kingdoms yet existed, when humanity itself was still young. Here lies the major twist. The Bantu fathers, arriving with iron, cattle and new languages, took Khoisan women into their families. The Khoisan men, almost erased from the paternal record. Their Y chromosomes are rare, almost silent. What survives in the Zulu genome is a covenant of blood, northern fathers and local mothers, a genetic pact forged in the quiet negotiations of survival. Imagine this scene as if the DNA itself remembers it. A Khoisan woman walks at dusk beside her Bantu husband, his spear catching the last red light of the sun. Their child carries two worlds in one heartbeat, a living bridge between the first people of the land and the newcomers who would change it forever. This child unknowingly becomes the ancestor of warriors, kings, and an empire. And yet, this was only the beginning, because from this blended bloodline, centuries later, a single man would rise. A man who would take the legacy of ancient mothers and conquering fathers, and forge it into a kingdom that shook the very ground of Africa. But centuries later, a man named Shaka would take this blended bloodline and forge it into a kingdom. The world remembers Shaka Zulu as a warrior king, but his empire was not built by spears alone. It was forged in bloodlines, reshaped through conquest, and written into the very DNA of his people. By the early 1800s, the land that is now KwaZulu-Natal was a mosaic of small Nguni-speaking clans. Then Shaka rose, a leader of unmatched vision and brutality, and unleashed the Mafeking, the crushing. Villages burned, tribes scattered. Some fled hundreds of miles north into the mountains and plains of modern-day Zimbabwe, birthing new nations like the Ndebele. Others were absorbed into the Zulu heartland, and their genetic legacy merged with the bloodline of the conquerors. The DNA remembers this era as a storm. Y chromosomes, the mark of fathers, from defeated warriors entered the Zulu gene pool. Mitochondrial DNA, the lineage of mothers, from refugees and captured women, carried entire family histories into Shaka's kingdom. Every marriage, every adoption, every act of survival left a signature in the genome. And today, scientists see the evidence, a population spike around 1300 AD, reflecting pre-Shaka expansions, followed by the explosive growth of the Zulu under his rule. But Shaka's empire was not only a story of conquest, it was also a story of assimilation. In the heart of every modern Zulu is a genetic map of that turbulent century, a record of alliances, betrayals, and survival etched in blood. The spear may have conquered the land, but DNA remembers the families that were woven into the fabric of a new nation. Picture the scene. A boy born in a conquered village grows to bear the name Zulu. His father's Y-DNA is now part of the kingdom. His mother's mtDNA is a living archive of a tribe, long forgotten by history. Every heartbeat is a bridge between loss and legacy. Yet, Shaka's rise was not the last great genetic quake, because beyond the mountains and rivers, another force was moving closer. One that would not come with spears or shields, but with ships and strangers and a new kind of blood. Before those strangers ever arrived, Shaka's empire had already spilled beyond its borders, leaving footprints in distant lands. The Mafeking, the Age of the Crushing, was not just a war. It was a migration written in blood, scattering families, warriors, and entire clans across southern Africa. And far to the north, beyond the Drakensberg Mountains, a new nation was being born, the Ndebele of Zimbabwe. Their story is carved into both history and DNA. These were not strangers. They were Zulu in every sense, warriors and families who followed Mzilikazi, one of Shaka's former generals, as he led them into the highlands of Matabeleland in the early 1800s. In the soil of those new lands, they built a kingdom of their own, but their genetic fingerprints never forgot where they came from. Modern genome-wide studies reveal the truth with chilling clarity. The Ndebele and the Zulu are almost genetic twins. Their Y chromosomes bear the unmistakable E1B1A E-M2 signature of the Bantu fathers. Their mitochondrial DNA carries the L0D and L0K haplogroups, the whispers of Kusan mothers, linking them to the oldest maternal lines on Earth. Even after travelling hundreds of miles through war and exile, the first genetic covenant survived, unbroken. This is more than science. It is a living echo. A father's bloodline marching across mountains, a mother's lineage singing softly in every child born under the Matabele sun. Language, culture, and DNA, all carried together like sacred fire, passing through generations. But this legacy carried more than pride. Hidden deep in these bloodlines were secrets, mutations shaped by millennia of survival. Some gave protection against deadly diseases, others were silent threats, waiting to strike. And as the Zulu and Ndebele bloodlines expanded, they carried with them ancient dangers written in their genes. And what those genes reveal will change how we see life and death itself. In the quiet code of Zulu DNA lies a story of warfare older than any kingdom. A battle fought not with spears or shields, but with parasites and disease. And the greatest twist? The very genes that once saved lives are now the ones that threaten them. Scientists studying Zulu genomes found a hidden signature in their blood. The APOL1 gene variants G1 and G2. Long ago, these mutations were heroes. They gave protection against sleeping sickness, a deadly parasite spread by the tsetse fly. Without these variants, many of their ancestors might never have survived the swamps and riverlands of their migration. But nature never grants victory without cost. Today, those same genes have a dark side. If a person inherits both risky variants, a double dose of G1 or G2, their risk of kidney failure skyrockets. Not by a little, but 7 to 10 times higher than normal. Modern studies show that up to 11% of the Zulu population carry this high-risk genotype, a silent danger written into the bloodline of survival. The gene that once saved generations now betrays their descendants. and the DNA holds more secrets. Tuberculosis, a killer that has haunted southern Africa for centuries, leaves a unique mark on treatment. Over 52% of Zulu TB patients are NAT2 slow metabolizers, meaning their bodies process certain drugs too slowly, raising the risk of liver toxicity during therapy. In the twisting language of evolution, the same code that shielded them from one threat makes them vulnerable to another. Close your eyes and imagine the DNA speaking. It remembers ancient enemies, parasites in the blood, bacteria in the lungs. It remembers the price of survival, carried forward like a scar in every cell. Each heartbeat is a ledger of victories and losses, written across thousands of years. But this is not the end of the story, because buried even deeper in Zulu DNA is a memory older than disease, a record of migrations and encounters that science is only now beginning to uncover. And the next revelation will rewrite the map of their ancestral journey. Deep beneath the green hills of KwaZulu-Natal, where rivers carve through red earth and wind hums through the valleys, the land is alive with memory. Every blade of grass bends over buried history, and for over 1,300 years, the soil kept a secret, the bones of the first Zulu ancestors. And when science finally dared to look, those bones spoke. Archaeologists uncovered 12 Iron Age skeletons, their graves silent since around 700 CE. These were the men, women and children who lived before Shaka, before the Mofokeng, before any written history of the Zulu. Through ancient DNA sequencing, scientists cracked open the past, revealing direct genetic links between these early farmers and the Zulu people alive today. Every rare allele carried in those bones, shaped by time, migration and survival, is still flowing in modern blood. The evidence was undeniable. The Zulu are not just people of the land. They are the land itself, a lineage unbroken for more than a millennium. Close your eyes and picture it, a single rib bone lifted from the earth, silent for over 1,000 years. Its marrow becomes a genetic time machine, telling the story of love, loss, migration and survival. Modern genomes line up against the ancient ones, side by side, almost identical, like past and present shaking hands across 1,300 years. The same soil that buries ancestors now breathes them back to life through DNA. But the story these bones told was not simple pride. Hidden in the data were unexpected variations, tiny fragments of DNA that whispered of outsiders, of encounters long forgotten by oral history. This was not a tale of isolation. It was a network of bloodlines, of bridges stretching beyond the hills, connecting the Zulu to neighbours and travellers who walked these paths centuries ago. And here lies the twist, because in the genome, purity is an illusion. The blood of the Zulu carries a story not of walls, but of connections, threads weaving us and other into a single human tapestry. And the next revelation will challenge everything we believe about where those threads truly lead. For centuries, outsiders told a story about Africa that was never true. They spoke of pure tribes, fixed races, and hard lines between people, as if humanity could be divided into boxes. But the Zulu genome destroys that myth. When scientists mapped the DNA of the Zulu alongside their neighbours, the results were undeniable. There are no walls in our blood. Instead of sharp divisions, the genome shows gradients, a seamless flow of ancestry across rivers, mountains, and centuries. The Zulu share most of their DNA with the Xhosa and Swazi, close cousins of the Nguni family. And deeper still, fragments of their genome link to East African peoples, the distant echoes of the great Bantu migration that began over 5,000 years ago. The myth of racial purity collapses under this evidence. Colonial history carved borders and told people they were separate, different, even enemies. But the DNA tells another story. We are not branches broken from the tree. We are the roots, twisted together, inseparable from the soil and from each other. Picture the connections as a living map. A Zulu child born in KwaZulu-Natal carries genes that trace back to a Khoisan mother from 100,000 years ago. Another strand whispers of a Bantu father who walked down from the forests of Cameroon. And somewhere, a subtle marker links them to ancestors near Lake Victoria, part of the chain of migration that reshaped the continent. In one heartbeat of 1,000 journeys converge. This is not just science, it is an emotional truth, a reminder that identity is woven, not isolated. No people are pure, no blood runs in a single colour. And the Zulu, far from being a closed tribe, are a living proof of the human tapestry, stitched together by survival, love and movement across time. But if our blood remembers unity, then why do our histories remember division? Why did we forget that we were all once one? And the answer to that question lies in the next, most painful chapter. Sometimes, even the blood lies. Or worse, it hides the truth in ways science struggles to see. When geneticists turned to the Zulu genome expecting clarity, they were met with a puzzle. Their genome-wide association studies, GWAS, should have mapped neat patterns showing who carried which traits. Instead, the Zulu DNA broke the map. The data revealed fine population substructures invisible to the naked eye, hidden codes that split and shifted between the Zulu, Sotho and Songa. On the surface, they seemed closely related, but in the deep architecture of the genome, each group had evolved its own survival script. Here's the twist. A gene variant that might protect a Zulu life could harm a neighbour just a few hundred miles away. Global medical standards, designed mostly on European DNA, stumble here. Even Africa-wide drug trials can fail because the genome is not uniform. It is a patchwork of ancient strategies, each shaped by disease, famine, and migration. One case shook researchers. The TRDN gene, which helps control heart and muscle function, carries a unique adaptation in the Zulu. It may even provide hidden immunity, a mysterious advantage that scientists suspect could trace back to Khoisan ancestors, the first mothers still whispering in the bloodline. And then, the genome delivered its most haunting secret. Buried among the sequences was a rare mutation, older than the Bantu migration, older than the Iron Age graves of KwaZulu, older than any Zulu kingdom. It is a survivor from a forgotten era, a fragment of life that might predate us all. Imagine it, a single mutation carried quietly through the storms of history, connecting the Zulu people not just to Africa, but to humanity's earliest dawn. And this ancient thread is about to reveal a truth so deep it could redefine where the Zulu story truly begins. What if I told you that within the blood of modern Zulu women, the first voices of humanity still speak, not in words, not in songs, but in the molecular whispers of their DNA? When scientists traced the maternal line, the mitochondrial DNA, of Zulu women, they uncovered something extraordinary. Two haplogroups emerged, L0D and L0K, rare and almost sacred in their age. These maternal markers are living fossils. They stretch back over 100,000 years, to a time before Homo sapiens ever left Africa. To hold this DNA is to carry pages from the very first chapter of human evolution. Imagine it. A mother in the Kalahari, gathering water under a sky unbroken by cities or smoke. Her children grow, her daughters pass on her mitochondrial code, and that code never dies. Through famine, migration and empire, it survives, unbroken, until it reaches the women of KwaZulu today. Every heartbeat, every birth, is the echo of a song that began at the dawn of our kind. The scientists call them haplogroups, but the truth feels older, almost spiritual. L0D, L0K. They are not signatures, they are songs, resonating across 100 millennia, carried in the cells of women who walk the earth now. When sequenced, that DNA doesn't just tell the Zulu story, it tells our story. Because before the migrations, before tribes and borders, before anyone was Zulu or Xhosa or Swazi, we were one. We all walked out of Africa carrying the memory of these same mothers. And here is the final breath-stealing twist. This ancient maternal code, still alive in Zulu women today, may hold clues to the origin of humanity itself. A biological time capsule, a genetic map of where we came from, and perhaps where we are going. But could this DNA unlock secrets not just of Zulu history, but of the human story itself?